So in the end time discussions, you know, where Jesus talked about in the end times will be like it was in the days of Noah. Yeah. In the book of Luke, where he says that, he also says about Lot. So he says it'll be just like it was in the days of Noah. In Luke chapter 17, starting with verse 28, Jesus continues on. So he's talking about the days of Noah. What the end times going to be like? It'll be like the days of Noah. And starting with verse 28 of Luke 17, he says this: it was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed. Verse 31. On that day, the one who is on the housetop and whose goods are in the house must not go down to take them out. And likewise, the one who is in the field must not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to keep his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it. I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed. One will be taken, the other will be left. There will be two women grinding at the same place. One will be taken, the other left. Two men in the field. One will be taken, the other left. You know, that's a description of the rapture. But what was fascinating, what we found out the other day about Lot was, and Sodom, is in Ezekiel. Sodom and Gomorrah was a very wealthy city. And they had plenty. It said they had careless ease. So much, what it was saying was, they were so enamored with their stuff, they didn't help anybody with their stuff. They didn't help the poor people around them. They just were interested in their own self, their own possessions. I'll put it this way. They were interested in living their best life now. So, when you see it says here, the one who's on the housetop, whose goods are in the house, must not go down to take them out. Why does he say that? What is Jesus making his point about that? I think Jesus is making his point about that is, whose world are you attached to? Are you attached to this world and all your stuff, or you are attached to my world and the coming kingdom? Which one are you attached to? Because that was Lot's problem. If he's communicating the problem Lot had trouble letting go of his stuff. He did not want to leave. He had all night to leave, and he didn't want to leave. So you look at the end times, you look at what it says about the end times, then you look at our times, and you go, what's everybody attached to? They're attached to their best life now. I don't have a problem at all with turning the thermostat up and having lights on. You know, I don't like having to live without running hot water. And that's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about what owns us. Does something own us, or does God own us? And that's the question. Yeah.
Recently you've seen there's a shortage of semiconductors.
Oh, yeah.
Was listening to a newscast the other night on PBS. Apparently the United States only makes 12% of their needs. And you were talking about Taiwan and China and Russia. But the major players in the production of semiconductors, China, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. So if the Chinese were to go after Taiwan, they might play after Japan and South Korea at the same time.
Yeah.
And if they have the semiconductors, the United States is hamstrung because we've outsourced all of our stuff overseas, and we haven't got the ability to. We can't even put cars on the lots anymore.
Yep.
Things can change overnight pretty quick.
Yep. They really could. They really could. So I bring all that up in this discussion of angels because even with Lot, there were two angels that were assigned to him by God to go down there, it said, and I want to see for myself, God said. So God goes down and he sends two angels. And Abraham bargains with God, says, well, you know, if there's 50 you won't destroy, you wouldn't do that, Lord. That's not who you are. It gets down to 10, and Abraham quit after 10. Because in his mind, I think he was adding up Lot, his wife, those 2 girls, you know, his people who work for him, how many's in, you know, I think that's what Abraham was thinking. And I think Abraham knows they're all attached, you know, they're not close to God, they're not living. And so there were angels that went down there. And so angels are assigned to God's people. And sometimes the assignment to judge and the assignment to get people out, like in Lot's case, is one and the same. They went there and they told Lot, we can't do anything till you're out of here. Run. Run out now. Get out now. And they had to drag those people out of there. They had to drag Lot out of there because he was so attached. But the angels were able to do that. This physical manifestation of those angels to come there to help those people get out. God cared about the righteous. And he snatched them out. He dragged them out. So think about the rapture. And I'm talking about this aspect of this best life now. And you wonder how many people are just going to make it, just barely make it in the rapture because they're so attached to their stuff here.
And if things turn upside down here and this easy life we've known is gone, do we forget what our purpose here really is?
Yeah.
Or do we just complain, you know, like the Jews did? Oh, you know, at least when we were slaves, we had food. At least, you know, it's easy to do. I think about that a lot. You know, what would I do? Would I remember why I'm here just at this time, especially?
There are trials and testings, and there are judgments.
Yeah.
Okay. And the separation of those 2 things probably depends on who you are or God's purpose in it. But they are all, in a sense, and I throw the judgment in on this too, designed to bring you back to God, to make this stop. I want this trial to stop. Oh God, won't you please make this stop, right?
Yeah.
So I think trials and testings are one thing, judgments are something else, but in both of them, God is just trying to bring people back to Him. Noah spent 120 years trying to get people back to Him. Judgment's coming. Won't you come back? So, you know, a judgment, even in that sense, is not because God's in a bad mood, you know. It's that He's trying to get people to come back, but at the point where it's like, they're not coming.
Right.
And this can't keep going on.
Yeah.
So that's where that happened. But, God uses angels in that sense. So we're not going to look at an exhaustive list because there's 300 references here.
Wow.
Of angels in the Bible. And I'm not talking about demons. I'm just talking about the angelic, the ones who've chosen to be on God's side in this cosmic battle. That 2/3 of the total angels in heaven. So we're going to look at their existence tonight, the number of them. What does the Bible say about that? We're going to look at how they minister. You know, they are beings just like us. They have will, but they are also beings. What describes a being, even though they don't have a body like we have, they're a being because they, you know, of their ability to think. So we're going to look at all that tonight. But start with this thought. Ephesians 6:12 says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood. And sometimes it feels like it. Sometimes it seems like it. But our struggle is against powers and principalities, things that we cannot see, God says. And part of that is described in where do angels come from. Turn in your Bibles. We're going to be all over tonight. And we're just kind of work our way slowly. But Ray, if you would, I'm going to have you read Colossians 1. Verses 15 through 17. So we talked a little bit in previous sessions about where angels came from, and angels are identified. We're going to look at a couple of places where angels were identified way back when God, you know, was creating the earth. We're going to look at that scripture. How long have they been here? Where did they come from? You know, there's wild theories, you know, well, angels were always here, God was always here, angels were always here, kind of thing. But no, God created the angels, and Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 17, just tell that. So this is the verse that you can take somebody to and say, see, God created them. So
The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together.
what a great verse. I love Colossians. How many things were created by God? What does it say?
Everything.
All things. Everything. All things were created by him. So, both in the heavens and on the earth. And then it says visible, invisible. It says thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities. Everything was created for God, by God, for him, for his divine purpose. And I see in this scripture some of the order of heaven. You know, I think sometimes we talk about we'll get our rest on the other side by and by, and in that mindset, it's like, I don't have to work anymore, and that's true. But that doesn't mean we have nothing to do. I'll give you an example of this. So in the company I'm working for here, there's a lot of guys that are my age. And in the next 12 to 24 months, there's a bunch of them quit. There's at least a half a dozen of them, they're going to retire. I said, what is this retirement you are all talking of? And because I'm not yet anyway. But somebody said, yeah. And they were talking about these guys, said, yeah, they get up every day and want to know where they can't figure out where they want to go eat breakfast and drink coffee. I'm not picking on you, Bob. I'm just saying it's like, that doesn't sound fun to me at all. Sitting around doing nothing. So on the other side, and you don't sit around and do nothing.
He's got horses.
Yeah, he's got horses. He's got stuff. But to sit around and do nothing is kind of what some people think heaven's going to be like, and that's not what it's going to be like at all. Because in Colossians, he said heaven is he's created thrones and dominions, rulers, authorities. In other words, God has a purpose. There's a way that things are structured in heaven. And this kind of gives us a little bit of picture that we don't see all of it, but we see a little bit of it. So you've got all these angels, and all these angels have a job to do. And we'll have things to do on the other side as well. But specifically of the angels, they have things to do. All things hold together in him. So in the sense that angels have been created by God, he has given them things to do, he holds it together, and they have purpose.
I hope he doesn't relax.
Yeah, don't quit holding it together. Don't quit. Thoughts, questions on any of that?
I hope so, because that'd be boring.
Yeah.
Not to do anything. Bob and I, we're going to be taking care of all those white horses.
There you go. That's right. There's probably only white horses in heaven,
I
right?
hope
And guitars.
so.
We know that's true. There's guitars. Yeah.
I wonder, when we were in Revelation, I think it was the 19th chapter, it said when Jesus returns, he comes with the armies of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that all of the angels are in the army. So there are probably other angels doing other things besides being warring angels.
Yes, yes. And we'll look at it, but there's cherubim and there's seraphim, so there's different types of angels in that sense. But yeah, there's each of them have different functions.
Think there's hierarchy, like archangels?
Yes, yes. And we talked about it, we'll talk about it again when we get to Satan in this discussion of angels, because he is an angel. He is a fallen angel, but he was the chief angel in charge. He was the archangel by that description that we've seen in Isaiah and Ezekiel. There was no higher than him. Yes.
I just thought, evidently, there's angels that have separate talents.
Yeah.
But that's what?
Have separate talents.
Oh, yeah.
Probably pick a guitar or something silly.
There you go. They're a dime a dozen, right, Bob? Guitar pickers? that's the old line.
Yeah.
That old show from years ago, Touched by an Angel, really had that description well, because they modeled that out. There were different angels with different functions. And you could kind of see that in the storylines, and that was very, very much in line with what Scripture has and says about angels. So that was a great show.
Well, we see the two angels that went to Sodom and Gomorrah. They had like talents,
Yes.
but they were different.
Yep. They had authority, a power, and assignment. Right? They were there for a reason, and they were able to do what God sent them to do, and that was to rain fire and brimstone, on there. So very, very interesting. Very interesting on that.
That kind of goes to that sign they used to put in the back window. Don't make me come down there.
Yes.
They used to have one. God tell you something. I didn't say, don't make me come
Don't
down
make me come down there. Angels were in existence before the earth was created. So go to Job chapter 38. We looked at this verse a couple weeks ago. We're going to look at it again for this purpose tonight. Job chapter 38, verses 4 through 7. Carla, when you get there, if you wouldn't mind to read that, we have you do that.
Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? How far did you want me to go?
All the way to 7.
I'll go. Oh, or on what its footings were set, or who laid its cornerstone, while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy.
When the morning stars sang together and all the angels or the sons of God shouted for joy. They watched God do what he did to the earth as we know it.
Yeah.
They watched him do it. And they celebrated and they cheered and they praised for what had just happened. So, in the timeline, our timeline, where were they? Well, they were there before we were. They were there when God created the earth. And so, that tells you, they were created somewhere prior to the start of God creating the earth. And then Colossians says he did it. He created them there at that point. And so at the beginning. So angels watched, they celebrated, and in the beginning it says God created the heavens and the earth. And the heavens were created first, if you want to look at it in that sequence. Heavens and the earth. And so this morning stars and sons of God. We talked about this a little bit before, but I want to revisit it because in Genesis chapter 6, it talks about the sons of God. And then in other places, it talks about the morning stars. And it's identifying angels. So we saw that there was heavy demonic activity prior to Noah's time, or in Noah's time, not prior to Noah's time, in Noah's time. So in the days of Noah, there was heavy demonic activity going on because it says the sons of God, who are identified here in Job as sons of God. And so with that, in Hebrew, the word sons is Ben. And so I think Israel's first prime minister was David Ben-Gurion.
Ben-Gurion.
Yeah. And so so Ben, that word Ben is a guild or a class or a son or a member of a group. So the sons of God, a member of the group of God, a member of the ones who belong to God in that sense. And then the stars, the morning stars, is Kokab, which is defined as a prince or brothers or a progeny. So I like that it's noted as a prince. So the princes of God. In other words, it's saying here in Job that these were angels. These are identified as the angels of God, these created beings who have purpose to be there with him. So, any questions about that? Thoughts? It's funny how it's all there. You just got to connect the dots, All right, angels are spiritual beings. Let's go to Steve, if you would find Hebrews chapter 1, verse 14. That's fine.
New Testament, right?
Yeah. It's somewhere. Find Matthew and keep going to the right.
Beat me to it.
I'm kidding, Al. I'm kidding.
Punch him, Connie. Elbow him, Connie.
Al looked over me like,
Put a bag on his head.
Hebrews 1, what?
Verse 14.
Verse 14. Next page here. Okay. Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for those who will inherit salvation?
Yeah. So angels are identified as ministering spirits for those who will inherit salvation, which is God's people. God's people. It also says later in Hebrews that sometimes, make sure you treat people well, strangers well, because sometimes you are ministering to angels not knowing that they're angels. Angels unaware.
Yes.
There's a guy I worked with years ago. years ago. And he was a Christian guy. And he said he would drive in to work from over east. I think he lived in Homer. But he'd drive in. And he said it was in the middle of the winter, and this guy was out hitchhiking. And he didn't have a coat. And he said, and it was snowing, and he said it was cold. And he said, I just felt bad for him. So I pulled over, and I said, where are you going? He said, it was Champaign. And he said, so he got in. He said he looked kind of beat up, you know. He didn't have great clothes or anything like that. Didn't have a coat on. He said, but he got in the car and he didn't seem cold. And he said, so we just drove on. We talked a little bit. He said, every time I looked at him, his eyes, he just looked like he was looking right through me. And so he said, he took him to Champaign, and he said, I got to where I think over there, 5 Points in Urbana. And he said, well, you can let me out here. And he said, do you have any money? And the guy said, no. He said, so all I had was a $5 bill. So I took it out and gave it to him. And I said, well, you can have this, and Lord bless you, you know. And so the guy got out. He said, so I went on driving. And I didn't think any more thing about it. He said, got to work. And it was either later that day or the next day, he pulled out his billfold. It was that $5 bill was the only thing he had in there, and he pulled it out, and the $5 bill was in his billfold.
Dude.
He said, I know that was an angel. I know it was an angel. He was so convinced. He said, because that was the only $5 bill I had. And he said I gave it to him, and then when I opened it up, it was in there. So.
That's so cool.
And it was a cool story.
Yeah.
But angels unaware, God, we don't understand God's purpose. We can't, and we'll talk about this in a minute, we can't call angels on our command, but God will send them on our behalf. And that's what this is saying here in Hebrews 1:14, to serve us for the sake of those who will inherit salvation. You know, they're here to help us when we can't do some things on our own. Thoughts? Questions? Angels are ministering spirits. Angels belong to the invisible realm, but they are spiritual beings. Okay? So we can't always see them, but that doesn't mean they're not here.
But then they could take on human form, right?
Yeah.
They can take on human form.
Okay.
And the best example of that is Genesis 18 and 19. If you want to turn there real quick, I want to share from that one. Because that's what I just shared from on Sunday morning. So when God wanted Abraham and Sarah to know, you're going to have a son, God came, and two angels came with him, you know. And they told him, and Sarah was in the tent, but God knew that Sarah laughed. He said, why does Sarah laugh? What's she laughing about? It's what I'm telling you is true. So that all went together, and Abraham fixed a meal, and they ate a meal, Carla. So the physicalness of that, they dined with Abraham, even though they were spiritual beings. So Abraham and God have this conversation as the two angels go off to Sodom, right? That's chapter 18. So those two angels came with a message to Abraham. We're going to have a son. God's going to keep his promise. The same two angels go to Sodom with a job to find out what's going on and get anybody righteous. Find out if there was at least 10 people righteous there, they weren't going to destroy it. That was God's promise. I won't destroy it, he said, if there's 10 people. Verse 32 of chapter 18 says, Abraham says, let my Lord not be angry, and I will speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found. And God answered, I will not destroy it on the account of 10. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he departed, and Abraham went back to his place. While that is happening, these two angels are walking down to Sodom. So then when you pick up chapter 19, it's the same two angels that have just been with Abraham and Sarah. So the good news they brought to Abraham and Sarah, now they have bad news to deliver in Sodom. And not only do they have a bad news to deliver, they have an assignment. Either not destroy it because you have found 10 righteous people, but if you don't find 10 righteous people, you have to bring this judgment on here. And so they spend the evening with Lot and his family. And I still marvel when you get down to verse 12, and of course the whole debauchery of that whole town is described in the first 11 verses, right? So those two angels save Lot because the townsmen were about to take him out. They open the door, they pull him back in, and then they have a tough conversation with Lot and his family. Verse 12, it says, the angel said to Lot, do you have anyone else here? A son-in-law, your sons, daughters, anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of this place. Get them out. They're physically having a conversation with Lot. And they're telling him, you have got to get out now. And Lot drags his feet, because this was after the evening meal. The sun has gone down. This whole thing has happened. And they waited till sunrise before they got out. Because if you look down at verse 15, it says, at daybreak, the angels urged Lot, get up, take your wife and 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in this punishment. They waited all night, and they still hadn't left. They were still sitting there, even though God gave them a message that said, do this now. And we think, if God would just speak to us, we'd do this. I'd do that. If I just knew God would speak to me, you know? And it's like, didn't work for that time, did it? God spoke. God was speaking, and they weren't listening. And so, physically, angels, what they were working on Lot's behalf. And the New Testament calls Lot what? A righteous man. His soul was tormented there. Why was his soul tormented? I think his soul was tormented because he couldn't make up his mind what was more important, God or his stuff. I think he went back and forth, which is why he had such a hard time leaving. I think that they, and Mrs. Lot apparently was thinking, there's no target where we're going. I want at least to live in a town where there's a target. I'm going back. And that's when she turned into a pillar of salt. You know, I'm not going to Zoar. I'm going back. She turned, looked back, and what happened was exactly what the angels told them would happen. Don't look back. Yes.
You think that they become so secure in the middle, even in the middle of all this sin, the unknown was out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and do I trust God to take care of me out there? I mean, it's dangerous out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave out there. I want to stay here.
Right.
It sounded dangerous there.
Oh, well, yeah.
The angels hadn't pulled him back.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But they knew
It's the
what
devil.
life was here, and they didn't know
Exactly.
what it was out there. So you're afraid of the unknown.
Oh, sure.
It all comes down to trusting the Lord.
Yeah. My best life is here, angels.
Yeah.
My best life is here. My best life now
That's
is here.
right.
I don't want to go there because I
Yeah.
don't know if my best life is there.
Yeah.
It's
You know.
scary. It's scary to, you know.
Yeah.
But how we become enamored with our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was ever a nation with careless ease, I mean, it's us. And I'm not picking on us. I'm just saying
Oh, yeah.
we fit that description.
Yes.
If that's what the end days looks at like, that's exactly what we live with, careless ease. We don't have to think. Up until 2 years ago, I would never, ever think we needed to stock up on stuff. We'll just go to the store and get it. We're not buying all this stuff, keep this stuff here. I remember my grandparents, they would have stuff, and even mom and dad have stock, they would stock up stuff. Oh, I got to go to the store and get coffee decks. Oh, I got an extra one here. And there's like 4 of them in there.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I got an extra one. So, I take one of dad's coffees.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I never lived like that. When I've got one. And when I get down to the last coffee, I'll go get one more. Well, not now. It's like, I'm going to stock up. Because, we're living, I'm talking about our best life now. We're living with like, you don't know, maybe there won't be coffee in 2 weeks, and we haven't ever lived in a place where we did not have careless ease, to use that phrase. We've just always been able to get what we want when we want it, by and large, But to Sodom's detriment, and I think to America's detriment, it's like we're not thinking enough about others. We're only thinking about my best life now. Hope you get yours,
That description of Babylon in Revelation really fits America.
Yes.
Oh my
You-
gosh, yes.
It just, Unbelievable.
Yeah. So angels interacting with Lot on their behalf saved people in that sense, if you want to call it. At least Lot was. His wife isn't identified as that, and those two daughters aren't identified as that in the New Testament. Lot was identified as that righteous man who was tormented in his soul. But you talk about the skin of your teeth, getting out of a place by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
That was them, because the angels told them, if you don't leave, you will be swept away. Saved or not, if you choose not to go, it's on you, is what they're saying.
Doesn't it say they took him by the hand and
Yes.
drug him out?
Yes. He hesitated. Even after that, verse 16 says, he hesitated. But the Lord's compassion for him, the men grabbed his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, and they brought them out and left them outside of the cities. And again, they said, run for your lives. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere. Run to the mountains. And Lot again says, oh, no, my lords, please. It's like, I'm telling you, there's 3 times, you've got to get out. You've got to go. You've got to get out. You've got to go. Do I have to? You know? And so, I mean, he was arguing with angels. That's not God. But they came with an assignment. And the assignment was, save him if you can. But, like it said, 2 will be left. 1 will be taken, 1 will be left. Yeah, Connie.
So when it talked about Lot being tormented in his soul, the torment in his soul then was the fact that he couldn't make the choice to leave this behind and go where God wants him.
Yeah.
Is that the torment?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Never happy. He was never happy, never satisfied. You know these people who are never happy, never satisfied. Because they can't get all in for God or out. Jimmy Dell tells this story. And he said, when he was a kid, he felt urged. He knew he was supposed to be a preacher, but he was super talented. And so he was playing piano. Dwayne Eddy, he grew up with there in Coolidge, Arizona, started this band. And people were hiring him to come play. And Dwayne Eddy tells the story in Jimmy's book, says Jimmy would get hot on rock and roll, and then he'd go to church, and they'd get hot on church, and then we wouldn't see him for a while. And then he'd get hot on rock and roll, and he would go back and forth between church and rock and roll. And he just did that. And Jimmy said, he always wanted a hit, and he got a hit. And after that, it was like, he said, I'm sitting in a hotel room and I'm all by myself. And he was on this tour with all these people, Jackie Wilson and the Everly Brothers and all these people who were people, right? Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. And he's sitting there in a hotel room all by myself, he said. And he said, I was thinking, I got a #1 record. Is this all there is to it?
You're right.
He was unhappy. He was unsatisfied because deep down inside, he knew what he was supposed to be doing. And he still fought it for another 3 or 4 years. He fought it until he was driving a truck. And he said, man, the Lord got a hold of me that time. And he said, and he stuttered, And he said, I don't know how you'll ever use me, God. So he was still fighting it, okay? So he was still fighting it. And he said, I'll prove it to you, God. I'll preach on a Sunday night, and it'll be so bad nobody's ever going to want to use me. Because he was making a lot of money entertaining. And so he got up, he said, I preached for 10 minutes, maybe 15. I went and sat back down, and my wife was sitting there in the row, and she just turned and looked at me. And he said, I knew it was going to be bad. He just turned and he said, what? She said, you didn't stutter once. And he said, I never stuttered after that. Once he started doing what God said, So in that sense, there's not satisfaction till you really do what God wants you to do. And in Lot's case, I think that's probably part of it. He was super successful. He was wealthy, remember? Because that's why they separated, he and Abraham. Because he was doing well, Abraham was doing well. We can't do well together. We're going to have to go our separate ways. So he was making a lot of money. And he was a big man in Sodom. And it was like, man, I don't want to leave. I got it going on. I got my best life. Yeah, I hate that phrase. You understand? I hate that phrase. I got my best life now.
No, but when you say it, everybody knows what you mean.
It's like, So I think, Connie, that the description of that is the same thing we go through when we're not completely sold out. I think we're unsatisfied and we're tormented inside because it's our soul that is wrestling these things, and it's our soul that Satan is really attacking in spiritual warfare.
How's the scripture go? You can't serve God and mammon.
Yes, exactly.
It won't work.
Yes, the things of the world or God, you can't have them both.
No.
And have one of them own you. You can be a servant of the Lord and be wealthy like Abraham and dozens of others as examples that we have in the Bible. God doesn't condemn wealth. He condemns wealth owning us rather than him owning us. That's what is condemned.
You have to be willing to give all that up for the Lord if it comes to that.
Yes.
If you can't be of that mind, forget it.
Because why was that rich young ruler sad?
Yes.
Jesus said, oh, have you kept all the law? He said, I've kept all the law since I was a young kid. He said, well, sell everything you've got and follow me. And he went away sad because he was living his best life now, you know. And it was hard to let it all go. And he couldn't do it.
How many times have you said that tonight?
4. As a matter of fact. And it's not planned. It's like so.
I just lost a wife. I don't know, somebody preached a sermon on it. Did she actually stop and turn around and look back to Sodom and Gomorrah? Or did her heart, did her desire is to go back there?
Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
Either way,
Yeah.
you ought to be.
Or both.
But yeah,
Yeah. Or both.
and then when God turned her to Saul, you know, to me that would have been saying, he ain't kidding.
Yeah.
Right.
He ain't kidding.
Yeah.
Her name was Morton.
Oh my.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, let me keep moving here. Angels are personal beings, and a personal being is this. You have to have 3 things to be a person, okay? You have to have emotions, intellect, and will. Emotions, intellect, and will. There's spirit, soul, and body, right? Well, what makes a person is all 3 of those, right? And what's holding the emotions, intellect, and will is this body.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's holding it. So the person that we are is only contained in this body, but you take this body away and we are still emotion, intellect, and will.
Yes.
That lives forever. So we too are spiritual beings like angels, except we are parked in a permanent body. They are not parked in a permanent body.
Made in God's image.
Yep, exactly. And we know that angels celebrate. So Luke, Connie, you want to look one up? Luke chapter 15, verse 10. Luke chapter 15, verse 10. And what that describes, what we'll see here, is that angels celebrate stuff that they see happen on earth.
Chapter 15, verse
10.
10.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents.
There you go. We used to hear that quoted a lot in church, because there used to be a lot of people who would get saved in church.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we don't quote it very much anymore, because you fill in the blank. But the angels celebrate when their salvation comes to someone here on earth. They celebrate because they know what that means, right? So they have the emotion to do that. Bob, you want to look up 1 Peter chapter 1? Because in this we find that angels are watching. They are spectators to a degree, but also participants, but they see what's going on. So can we see what's happening here from the other side? Yeah, I think there's, at least the angels can see what's going on. they're up to speed. And I'll give you the example of the angel Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life, you know. Let me show you what's happening, Clarence, you know. Well, it's kind of that same way. They can kind of see what's going on, although Clarence didn't. Clarence would have had, he wasn't, if he was really a person here, he wasn't getting angel wings, but you know what, it's still fun. So Bob, 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 12.
To whom it was revealed that not unto themselves, but to us they did minister the things which are now reported unto you by them that have preached the gospel, and unto you with the Holy Ghost sent down from heaven, which things the angels desire to look into.
Yeah, so angels desire to look into these things. Angels desire to understand this aspect of salvation. They celebrate salvation when it happens to us, and they look to understand it. So they have the intellect, the will, the mind to be able to say, we want to understand more of it. But remember, salvation did not come to them, right? So angels look and marvel over the aspect of salvation and redemption, but they work to comprehend it, Dr. Tony Evans says. He says God never intended that to them because they were with God, and their choice was either to follow God or follow Satan. When Satan and his demons made their decision to live in opposition to God, their fate was sealed. In other words, salvation was given to mankind because we were deceived. The angels full well knew what they were choosing. They were choosing opposition to God or to be on God's side.
In Hebrews 12:1 it says, we are compassed by so great a cloud of witnesses.
Yes.
Who all or what are you've got angels, demons. Are there also believers that might have passed on before?
Yeah, I think believers are included in that, and I think, hang on here, the reason I think that, Alan, is because in chapter 11 is that hall of faith, you know, what we call the hall of faith, and that writer is pointing out that these people had, you know, served God, and he's holding up all these people as saying these were people who've lived for God and held their faith up. And then verse 39 of chapter 11, it says, all of these were approved through their faith, and they did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, so that they would not be made perfect without us. Therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses, so I attach that to the faithful, those Christian believers and those righteous believers who all through those years are standing there. And if you want to picture an athletic contest, they're standing there in the stands cheering us on while we do this here. But they could include the angels as well, certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a head start. Daniel chapter 7, 9 and 10. And while you're looking that up, I'm going to tell you, well, so angels don't procreate. Angels can't make other angels. And Jesus, when he was talking about marriage, he says, in heaven, there is no marriage. We're just like the angels in that we don't procreate. He said, for in the resurrection, they neither marry or are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And, you know, young couples are sad to hear this. We won't be married in heaven. Older couples go, it's cool, it's all right. Okay.
It'll be all right.
It just seems like that's how the conversation goes. I'm just going to leave it right there.
I think that's because love will be so different.
Yeah.
And it'll be complete.
Yeah.
And our, like I said, our love is kind of flawed,
Yeah.
you know. So it won't be necessary.
True.
In that sense.
Yeah. Well, and it completes us here with pieces that we don't have from each other, correct?
Yes.
But there, we shall be like him.
Yes.
And so we won't be incomplete, any of us.
Right.
We won't be incomplete. So in that sense, it's not needed, you know.
7, 9, and 10.
Yes, sir.
I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the wool, pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened.
So in this scene, you've got 10,000 times 10,000s and thousands upon thousands of angels. They're uncountable. You know, there's just millions of them. And those are the ones who are on God's side. Because 2/3 of them stayed with God and 1/3 of them went away. So there's still, I mean, think of when we get to the demonic part of this and we'll talk about demons here in a couple of weeks, you realize there's a lot of them because there's a lot of chaos in the world that they bring. But they're still outnumbered 2-1, you know, from the ones that choose to stay with God. But there's just, they're uncountable. Think what heaven will be like in that time when we're all shouting glory, glory, glory. When the redeemed are there and the angels are there and we're all together as one, how magnificent that'll be. To be together in praise at that moment. It'd be incredible. Just incredible. So, anybody?
When we talk about demons, Carla can bring that book she read there a while back and read a couple paragraphs to us.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So much for Oprah's book club here.
Also in Daniel, we see, and again, these are just little glimpses. There are 300 scriptures, 300 references in the Bible, right? So we're just kind of touch point in certain ones here. Daniel chapter 10, verses 5 and 6 talks about this. What this particular angel was incredibly glorious. It says, I lifted my eyes and looked, and there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl. His face was the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet were like the gleam of polished bronze, and the sound of his words were like the sound of a tumult. And so that was a description of an angel there. We've seen angels in all of Revelation that have gloriousness about them, power about them, authority in what they do. And even one of those angels, John, went down to bow. And the angel said, don't do that. I'm a servant just like you. You don't bow to me.
You can see why they always say, don't be afraid. I mean, if you see something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So it's beyond that. They are functional beings, and I want to share one final scripture with all of this tonight. In Acts chapter 12, if you want to turn to Acts chapter 12. It's a great story. It's a New Testament story. It shows the interaction that God is mindful of his people, what we can and can't do. God allows us to interact, or angels to interact with us when need be. And this is the story of Peter. You remember this story of Peter. Acts chapter 12, verses 1 through 11, it says, Now about that time Herod the king laid hands on some Christians who belonged to the church in order to mistreat them. And he had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. Now it was during the days of unleavened bread. When he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out before the people. I'm going to stop there for a second. In Canada, they put one of those pastors who chose to have worship when the government said you cannot worship. They took one of those pastors and put him in a maximum security prison.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what was happening here.
Yeah. Solitaire.
I'd love to see the doors slide open.
And then, verse 5. So Peter was kept in the prison, but prayer for him was being made fervently by the church of God. On the very night when Herod was about to bring him forward, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and guards in the front of the door were watching over the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared, and a light shone in the cell. And he struck Peter's side and woke him up and said, "Get up quickly." And his chains fell off his hands. And the angel said to him, "Gird yourself and put on your sandals." And so he did. And he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." So he went out and continued to follow. And he did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. Verse 10. When he had passed the first and the second guard, they came to the iron gate that leads to the city, which opened for them by itself. And they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel departed from him. When Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know for sure that the Lord has sent forth his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting."
I often wondered what he said, where it says they passed the first and second guard. Did they not see him?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
You know,
They didn't see him. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about that. Yeah.
So when we're in heaven and we're before God and all around also, are we gonna know that this being over here is an angel, but this being over here was someone I knew from
Yes.
my life on earth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But we don't know when we see them in this life here on earth, we don't know that they're angels.
Right. Not necessarily right, do we? But what will be different there is that we will have a body like Jesus has a body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we'll be complete in that sense. It'll be you'll feel more alive then than you ever have felt here,
Yeah.
even when you were 30.
But won't the angels also?
What's that?
Won't the angels also be complete in that way?
Yes, but not like Jesus was complete. He said, because in that day we shall be like him in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. And what did we know like he was like? So he was fully man, he was fully deity and fully God, but he was fully a human as well. Unstained by sin, which is called the hypostatic union of deity and humanity come together. And it says we will be like him. Well, in his resurrected body, he was able to eat, he was able to enjoy, but there was, and he said, "Look here, you see the scars? Here's the scars." So he has the scars that we can see. I don't know that we will have necessarily the physical scars. I don't think that we will have the physical scars, but he will. But I think in that sense, we will have a new body. It said we will be given this new body, and that's the separation between us. So there will be something human about us in that sense that will be obvious, and there will be something spiritual in the angelic sense, but we'll be able to tell the difference.
Yep.
If that helps
We got
you.
a big meal coming.
That's right.
Yeah, we do.
That's right. I'm beginning to wonder if our personal server at the marriage supper of the Lamb might be our guardian angel here on earth. Won't that be?
Suppose.
Let me tell you what I kept you from, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
You
Can I have more coffee?
No idea.
Sure, but let me tell you about this. Remember that time? I kept you safe. I don't know if that'll happen, but it's kind of cool to think about it, So, isn't that kind of fun?
In Vietnam, I ran through a minefield and didn't trip one. I thought there must have been an angel guiding me through that
Wow.
thing. Yep. The first. Have I told you the story?
I remember you talking something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll
You
make
just
it. Real,
worked your guardian angel to death.
I'll make it real quick. It was my first outing as a medic, and we had a guy that hit a boob trap. The line of all of our soldiers went around this way. We were walking dyke patties, I didn't know any different. Shortest distance between 2 points, straight line, right?
Yeah.
Zip. I ran right over there to him. Afterward, my platoon sergeant said, "Hey, Doc," they call you Doc. And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You realize you just ran through a minefield?" I what?
Oh man.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you talking about that, but I didn't
Yeah.
remember all those details.
I
That's
thought,
crazy.
thanks, Lord.
Yeah, no doubt.
Huh.
No doubt.